The last couple of weeks, we have been talking about different types of text structure. One of them that we talked about was cause and effect. The way a story was organized was it would state a cause and then give the effect of that cause. Another text structure that we talked about was problem and solution. In the story, a problem would be stated, and then towards the end, a solution would be resolved. This week, we're going to be talking about description. Today, we're going to read Chrysanthemum, and in this story, we're going to look at the description of this character, and we're going to use a thinking map. It's called a bubble map. I'm going to put a bubble circle in the middle, and our character, her name is Chrysanthemum. I'm going to write her name in the middle. Ooh, it's a long name. And then coming out from our center circle, we're going to have descriptions of Chrysanthemum. We're going to look at ways to describe maybe her physical characteristics, or maybe her internal characteristics. Who is she? How would you describe her character inside and outside? Okay, so Chrysanthemum by Kevin Hinks. The day she was born was the happiest day in her parents' lives. "She's perfect," said her mother. "Absolutely," said her father. And she was. She was absolutely perfect. I could write perfect on here, but she was just born, so it's not quite describing her characteristic. That's just her parents' opinion of her, because all parents think their children are perfect. "Her name must be everything she is," said her mother. "Her name must be absolutely perfect," said her father. And it was. Chrysanthemum. Her parents named her Chrysanthemum. Chrysanthemum grew and grew and grew, and when she was old enough to appreciate it, Chrysanthemum loved her name. So right now on this page, how would you describe her feelings? Does she seem like a sad person, or a little mouse, really? Angry, happy, joyful? She seems pretty happy about it, right? So I'm actually going to write happy. Now, characters can change throughout the story, but right now she's happy. She's happy right now at the beginning. She loved the way it sounded when her mother woke her up. She loved the way it sounded when her father called her for dinner. And she loved the way it sounded when she whispered it to herself in the bathroom mirror. Chrysanthemum, chrysanthemum, chrysanthemum. Chrysanthemum loved the way her name looked when it was written with ink on an envelope. She loved the way it looked when it was written with icing on her birthday cake. And she loved the way it looked when she wrote it herself with her fat orange crayon. Chrysanthemum, chrysanthemum, chrysanthemum. If she's loving her name right now, she seems happy. But what's another word that you would use to describe her? How does she feel about who she is? Does she like who she is, or does she want to change who she is? Right now, she likes who she is. She seems pretty content with who she is. So right now, I'm going to add that to our circle map. She's pretty content. She's content with her name, and she's content with who she is. She doesn't want to change it. She's happy being Chrysanthemum. Chrysanthemum thought her name was absolutely perfect. And then she started school. On the first day, Chrysanthemum wore her sunniest dress and her brightest smile. She ran all the way. "Hooray!" said Chrysanthemum. "School!" But when Mrs. Chud took roll call. Everyone giggled upon hearing Chrysanthemum's name. Mrs. Chud, Dawn, Eve, Lois, Al, Les, Kay, Max, Sue, Bill, Pat, Tom, Sam, Ken, Joe, Rita, Victoria, Chrysanthemum. She ran out of room. Are you sensing a change right now in who she is, or maybe the way she thinks about herself? It's so long, said Joe. It scarcely fits on your name tag, said Rita, pointing. I'm named after my grandmother, said Victoria. You're named after a flower. Chrysanthemum wilted. She did not think her name was absolutely perfect. She thought it was absolutely dreadful. She wilted. What do you think that word means? Think about when a flower wilts. Is it fresh and healthy looking? It looks kind of like a sad flower, right? Does she look like a sad mouse? Is she happy and content right now? No. Other people are making fun of her and changing her perspective. That's not okay. So right now, I think I'm going to add she feels discontent now. She was content, but now she's feeling discontent. We've talked about that prefix dis, meaning not, or the opposite of. So if dis means not, then not content. The rest of the day was not much better. During nap time, Victoria raised her hand and informed Mrs. Chud that Chrysanthemum's name was spelled with 13 letters. That's exactly half as many letters as there are in the entire alphabet, Victoria explained. Thank you for sharing that with us, Victoria, said Mrs. Chud. Now put your head down. Sometimes I think that we worry too much about other people. Right now, I think Victoria is worried way too much about Chrysanthemum's name instead of doing what she's supposed to be doing. Make sure we don't get in that habit. If I had a name like yours, I'd change it, Victoria said, as the students lined up to go home. I wish I could, thought Chrysanthemum miserably. She's thinking that miserably. So not only is she discontent, right now she's feeling miserable. Even though her parents told her it was perfect and she thought her whole life it was a perfect name. One person is making fun of her at school and now she's changing who she is and her thoughts. That's not okay. Don't let one person change who you think of yourself. Welcome home, said her mother. Welcome home, said her father. School is no place for me, said Chrysanthemum. My name is too long. It scarcely fits on my name tag. And I'm named after a flower. Notice, those are the things that Victoria said to her. So she's just repeating those insults. Oh, pish, said her mother. Your name is beautiful. And precious and priceless and fascinating and winsome, said her father. It's everything you are, said her mother. Absolutely perfect, said her father. Look at her. Can you infer how she feels right now? Does she look happy and joyful and content? No, she looks discontent and miserable and really sad. Chrysanthemum felt much better after her favorite dinner, macaroni and cheese with ketchup, and an evening filled with hugs and kisses and parcheesi. That's a board game. That night, Chrysanthemum dreamed that her name was Jane. It was an extremely pleasant dream. The next morning, Chrysanthemum wore her most comfortable jumper. She walked to school as slowly as she could. She dragged her feet in the dirt. Chrysanthemum, 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 she wrote. She even looks like a flower, said Victoria as Chrysanthemum entered the playground. Let's pick her, said Rita, pointing. Let's smell her, said Joe. Chrysanthemum wilted. Again, she's wilting. She did not think her name was absolutely perfect. She thought it was absolutely dreadful. Look at her face. So again, that word wilted, that's something that flowers do. When you pick a flower, maybe off a rose bush, and you put it in water, and after a few days it starts to wilt. So her name is the name of a flower. So not only is wilted going along with her name, the flower, but also how she feels inside. The rest of the day was not much better. During nap time, Victoria raised her hand and said, "A chrysanthemum is a flower. It lives in a garden with worms and other dirty things." "Thank you for sharing that with us, Victoria," said Mrs. Chudd. "Now put your head down." "I just cannot believe your name," Victoria said as the students lined up to go home. "Neither can I," thought Chrysanthemum miserably. So again, she's miserable. And I'm going to add, not only is she miserable, and she's discontent. She's really thinking negative about herself now. Now she's thinking she doesn't have the perfect name, and she wants to change it. If she wants to change her name, that means she is discontent. So she's not liking who she is right now. Again, all because a mean student was making fun of her. Now, boys and girls, make sure that you are never acting like Victoria, because that is no way to treat other people at all, ever. "Welcome home," said her mother. "Welcome home," said her father. "School is no place for me," said Chrysanthemum. "They said I even look like a flower. They pretended to pick me and smell me." "Oh, pish," said her mother. "They're just jealous." "And envious and begrudging and discontented and jaundiced," said her father. Okay, those are a lot of adjectives to describe her classmates. "Who wouldn't be jealous of a name like yours?" said her mother. "After all, it's absolutely perfect," said her father. Chrysanthemum felt a trifle better after her favorite dessert, chocolate cake with buttercream frosting, and another evening filled with hugs and kisses and parcheesi. See, Dad's reading a book, A Rose by Any Other Name, Understanding Identity. I want to also add here, she also is loved very much by her parents. Her mom and dad spend time with her. They cook her favorite foods. They hug and kiss her. She is a very loved little girl. And really, that's all that matters, is that her parents love her very much. So I'm going to add, she's loved and also cherished. Her parents cherish her very much as their daughter, and they love her very much. That night, Chrysanthemum dreamed that she really was a chrysanthemum. She sprouted leaves and petals. Victoria picked her and plucked the leaves and petals one by one until there was nothing left but a scrawny stem. It was the worst nightmare of Chrysanthemum's life. Chrysanthemum wore her outfit with 7 pockets the next morning. She loaded the pockets with her most prized possessions and her good luck charms. Chrysanthemum took the longest route possible to school. She stopped and stared at each and every flower. "Chrysanthemum, chrysanthemum, chrysanthemum," the flowers seemed to say. That morning, the students were introduced to Mrs. Twinkle, the music teacher. Her voice was like something out of a dream, as was everything else about her. The students were speechless. They thought Mrs. Twinkle was an indescribable wonder. That's a great adjective right there. They went out of their way to make a nice impression. Mrs. Twinkle led the students in scales. Then she assigned roles for the class musical. Victoria was chosen as the dainty fairy queen. Rita was chosen as the spiffy butterfly princess. Joe was chosen as the all-important pixie messenger, and Chrysanthemum was chosen as a daisy. Chrysanthemum's daisy. Chrysanthemum's a daisy. Joe, Rita, and Victoria chanted, thinking it was wildly funny. Chrysanthemum wilted. She did not think her name was absolutely perfect. She thought it was absolutely dreadful. "What's so humorous?" asked Mrs. Twinkle. "Chrysanthemum," was the answer. "Her name is so long," said Joe. "It scarcely fits on her name tag," said Rita, pointing. "I'm named after my grandmother," said Victoria. "She's named after a flower." These kids are mean. I hope that you boys and girls never act that way. You're sweet. My name is long," said Mrs. Twinkle. "It is?" said Joe. "My name would scarcely fit on a name tag," said Mrs. Twinkle. "It would?" said Rita, pointing. "And," said Mrs. Twinkle, "I'm named after a flower too." "You are?" said Victoria. "Yes," said Mrs. Twinkle. "My name is Delphinium Twinkle. And if my baby is a girl, I'm considering Chrysanthemum as a name. I think it's absolutely perfect." So she's got a baby in her tummy, and she's thinking about using Chrysanthemum to name her baby because she loves it so much. Chrysanthemum could scarcely believe her ears. She blushed. She beamed. She bloomed. Oh, I like that word. Chrysanthemum, chrysanthemum, chrysanthemum. Now look how she's feeling now. Is she feeling happy again? Confident? Content? Special? Joe, Rita, and Victoria looked at Chrysanthemum longingly. "Call me Marigold," said Joe. "I'm Carnation," said Rita, pointing. "My name is Lily of the Valley," said Victoria. Chrysanthemum did not think her name was absolutely perfect. She knew it. Here's an epilogue. Overall, the class musical was a huge success. Chrysanthemum was absolutely perfect as a daisy. Victoria made the only mistake. She completely forgot her lines as the dainty fairy queen. Well, she was so worried about being mean to other people that she didn't take care of her own business. Chrysanthemum thought it was wildly funny, and she giggled throughout the entire dance of the flowers. Eventually, Mrs. Twinkle gave birth to a healthy baby girl, and of course, she named her Chrysanthemum. Okay, so I love that at the very end, it said that Chrysanthemum didn't think her name was perfect. She knew it. So by the end of the story, she became confident in who she was, and she was proud to be Chrysanthemum. So I'm going to add proud and confident. So the text structure of this story, Chrysanthemum, is using description. There was a lot of description and adjectives in this story. We just made a circle map for Chrysanthemum, but we could have done another one for the schoolmates. We could have done another one for Mrs. Twinkle. We could have done another one for her parents. So that would be how this story is structured. Now, you could say there's a problem and solution as well. The problem is that when Chrysanthemum started school, the boys and girls made fun of her name, and she became very sad and wanted to change it. What was the solution? Was that the same problem at the end of the story? No, at the end, the music teacher that everybody loved, she praised Chrysanthemum for her name and said that if she has a baby girl, she would use the same name. So then everybody loved her name, and then they didn't make fun of her anymore. But there is a lot of description in this story. So think about that this week. We're going to be doing a lot of description in your reading assignments this week and using very similar circle maps such as this, where you put the character or object in the middle. And then around it, you'll have your adjectives describing either the outside or the inside internal. And if you notice that through the story, characters change. And we saw that she went from happy to very discontent and miserable and sad. And then she was proud and confident again. So that definitely happens in stories where characters will change. So let me know if you have any questions. Work hard this week. We just have 3 more weeks of school, guys, of doing these lessons this week and the next 2 weeks. You guys got this.